Luke 14, Jesus heals on the Sabbath. One Sabbath day, Jesus went to eat dinner in a home of a leader of the Pharisees, and the people were watching him closely. There was a man there whose arms and legs were swollen. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in religious law, is it permit in the law to heal people on the Sabbath or not? When they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man and healed him and sent him away. Then he turned to them and said, "Which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath? If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out?" And then again they could not answer. Jesus teaches about humility. When Jesus noticed that all who had come to dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. When you're invited to a wedding feast, don't sit at the seat of honor, which is someone who are more distinguished than you will also be invited. The host will come and say, "Give this person your seat." Then you'll be embarrassed, and you will have to take whatever seat it is left at the foot of the table. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Then when your host sees you, he will come and say, "Friend, we have a better place for you." Then you will be honored in front of all the other guests. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who will humble themselves will be exalted. Then he turned to his host. When he put on a luncheon or a banquet, he said, "Don't invite your friends, brothers, relatives, or rich neighbors, for they will invite you back, and that will be your only reward. Instead, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Then at the resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you." Parable of the Great Feast. Hearing this, a man sitting at the table, Jesus explained, "What a blessing it is will be attend a banquet in the kingdom of God." Jesus replied to this story, "A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, 'Come, the banquet is ready.' But they all began making excuses. One said, 'I have just bought a field and must inspect it. Please excuse me.' The others say, 'I have just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I wanted to try them out. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I just got married, so I can't come.' The servant returned and told his master that they had said. His master was furious and said, 'Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town. Invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' After the servants had done this, he reported, 'There is still room for more.' So his master said, 'Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedge and urge anyone you find to come, so that the house will be full. For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet.'" The cost of being a disciple. A large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, "If you want to be my disciples, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else, your father and mother, wife and child, brother and sister, yes, even your own life. Otherwise you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if they were finished? Otherwise, You might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, "There's the person who started that building and cannot afford to finish it." Or, "What king would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his conspirators to discuss whether his army is 10,000 could defeat the 2,000 soldiers marching against him, and if he can't, he will send a delegation to discuss terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. So you cannot become my disciple without giving up something you own. Salt is good for seasoning, but if it loses its flavor, how do you make it salty again? Flavorless salt is good neither for the soil nor for the chore pile. It is thrown away. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand.